Alright, I guess we should start.
Should we?
I guess so. Alright! We're back. Graveyard Shift Movie Podcast, episode number 67. This week, it was Maverick's pick.
Yep.
He picked Shutter Island from 2010, directed by Martin Scorsese. The man, the myth, the legend. Scorsese. I gave that same intro to Spielberg, but Scorsese is getting it too. But also starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Shout out Leo.
Hell yeah.
But Maverick, I'm gonna change it up. We're gonna start with your score, because before we were talking earlier, and you said that this movie wasn't what you thought you were picking. So I don't know if that means you like it or if it means I don't know what. So what are you gonna rank your pick for this week?
I'm gonna go with the 4. Yeah, 4. It was a good movie, but it wasn't what I thought it would be. And a 4 isn't saying that it was a bad movie necessarily. And the only thing I knew about this movie was the trailer, and the trailer really misled this movie for me. So it's getting.
I didn't watch the trailer.
Yeah.
So, well, with that 4, Maverick, get ready for this one, because for only the second time for me for this podcast, I'm giving this one a perfect 10 out of 10. This movie slaps.
You ever watched this movie
I had
before?
seen it. And I won't say it because we're getting into spoilers, so I won't say anything yet. So I had seen it, and I knew kind of what the conclusion is that we'll talk about. But man, I forgot just how they did it and what the lead up. It's been so long since I watched this movie, and it slapped. So shout out. It's probably because my favorite Scorsese movie is Wolf on Wall Street. And this might be
Wolf of Wall Street.
Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah, I've fucked up the title 3 times. Maverick had to correct me. But Leo, funny, he's in that one too. But yeah, this one is creepy. This one might be my second or third favorite Scorsese movie. The only one, Goodfellas, is up there. I don't know if you've ever watched that. One day we'll do a smoke break for it. But yeah, I'm gonna give this one. I seriously thought, because I was watching it and I was like, man, I want to give this one a 10. And then as we came in here, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna give it a 10. So there you go. That's our rankings for Shutter Island. Spoiler warning. Trust me, there's big spoilers. So if you haven't seen it and you want to watch it, now's the time. If you're not, everything's getting ruined. So you've been warned.
You've been warned.
Been warned. So, did you ever figure out that he was a patient there? That he was crazy?
Not until they told me. Cause
yeah.
I was going with the whole vibe of they're gonna try to get him to, they're gonna try to admit him.
Yeah.
To cover up all their bullshit.
Well, this movie, it reminded me of a couple movies. It reminded me of a movie called Jacob's Ladder, which we haven't watched. Funny enough, I think Tyler was going to pick it like his first pick, but then he ended up picking that Fourth Kind movie. It reminded me of Jacob's Ladder. It reminded me of The Lighthouse, which I don't know if that's just because a lighthouse is in the movie or what. I think it has to do with Leo with all his visions throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that in the. But then, most importantly, Maverick, and see if you had the same feeling. Didn't this movie give off a lot of Wicker Man vibes? Where the Wicker Man, it was a dude goes to a secluded island, no one's telling the truth. He's trying to figure out this mystery and stuff. And meanwhile, there's this conspiracy where he's like, they're working against me. And the whole time I was like, man, this feels just like the Wicker Man. Even though I knew at the end of the movie that Leo was going to end up being crazy, but I forgot how they do the reveal, I forgot like what it was that made him crazy. I just thought he was like a crazy dude or whatever. I forgot like the most of the stuff about this movie except for like that he was insane. But it was something. I told you. I was like, the end of this movie depressed me the fuck out. I was like, I need to go watch some cartoons or some shit
Nah,
after it got over.
they totally got me because I really was like, they're plotting
Yeah.
and the fucking um they ended up like when he's like, "Well, where's my partner?" Right? And the dude's
Yeah.
like,
Where's
"You've never
Chuck?
had." Yeah, I don't know why they ended up just like they just gave up on the whole illusion. Um,
Well, if I remember right, like, wasn't someone coming to visit like the next day to see if he was better? Because I think wasn't Ben Kingsley who plays like the head doctor. What I think he was like, they're coming tomorrow, and if you're not better, like they're gonna, they're gonna make sure you never hurt anyone again.
yeah,
So
which I took that as like electric chair or some shit or no,
no, they were gonna do a lobotomy.
yeah, lobotomy,
Yeah,
yeah, okay, because they said lobotomy like 90 times in this movie.
yeah. Which once again, you never watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but do you know how that movie ends? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Jack
I've
Nicholson.
never heard of that shit.
It's classic, but I won't. But it has to do a lot with lobotomies and shit in that movie too. Jack, I won't. So Jack Nicholson is a prisoner who acts crazy, so then he can go and spend the next year of his life in a mental asylum where it's a lot looser than jail, even though he's not really crazy, but he's convinced people that he's crazy, and then he's like trying to run the mental asylum and stuff. But anyway, maybe we'll watch that one day too. That's a classic. But yeah, so I think that's why they gave up the bit at the end was people were coming to see if it worked, and if
Yeah,
it didn't, then I think it was game over.
I skipping to the very very end. I think it did work
Yeah,
because of dude's his last like you said
that's
thing.
yeah, that's a lot. So the movie, we'll go through the movie in a little bit, but the ending is like we said, Leo is crazy, and like we'll go into it, but he's the person he's been playing in this movie isn't real. It's a made up guy that he's created, so he doesn't have to
He's made his
live
own.
as himself. Who we'll get into his whole backstory, but he ends up saying, "Okay, yeah, I'm this guy. All this stuff is made up or whatever."
That's
And
how he does it.
that's how he does
I'm
it.
just
Yeah,
this guy.
and the final scene is Mark Ruffalo, who plays his partner in the movie. Once again, we'll get into who he really is. Walks over and sits down next to him, and Leo's like, "What's the next move, boss?" And Mark Ruffalo's like, "I don't know. You tell me." And he's like, "We gotta get off this island, Chuck. There's something bad going on here." And Mark Ruffalo just looks over to Ben Kingsley and them, and he's like, and he just shakes his head.
Yeah.
And it's really like the whole movie. They paint like the way they build Ben Kingsley's character is to be like the evil doctor who's got this plan, and there's this whole thing where he has a conversation with a lady where she's like, they're making super soldiers, people who can't feel pain and they can't admit to anything they did, and all this shit. And they paint Ben Kingsley as like this bad guy. And by the end of the movie, you can really see that Ben Kingsley is like really upset that like it doesn't work. And like it's clear that he cares about like what's going on there. And he's really trying his best to like help out Leo. And it doesn't work. And so he shakes his head over at them, and they send over the guy who's like holding an ice pick, who would be for the lobotomy or whatever. It wasn't an ice pick, but it looked like that.
They just showed something wrapped in a towel, and I was like, what
Yeah.
the fuck is that? I thought they were gonna fucking shank him.
Yeah.
I was like, oh fuck.
Just in the
I thought
yard.
they were just gonna take him out. I was like,
But
okay.
and then as they're coming to get him, Leo's like, there's something this place has me wondering. It's like, is it better to live as a evil man or die as a hero or whatever?
He's yeah. live as a monster or die as a great man.
Something, or a good man, yeah, or something like that.
Yeah,
And
which I thought
then,
was fucking fantastic.
yeah, it's because then he goes walking off with them, and the final shot is of the lighthouse, which is where what we've learned is where they do like brain surgeries and stuff.
Which would be worse? To live as a monster? Or to die as a good man?
So the movie kind of is like, well, that's what's about to happen. But that line, it has, because there's two sides. There's people who think that Leo regresses at the end again, and he is crazy, or like Maverick said, that Leo accepts what's happened, but he doesn't want to live with the fact that he killed his wife and all the bad stuff that happened. And so he chooses to let them basically get rid of all this so he can just, not have to deal with it at all.
I thought, once they, I figure it as they lobotomize him, and then just from then on out, he'd just be the fucking U.S. Marshal, the person he created.
A lobotomy, basically, and that's like a real thing they did. It basically, from all accounts, just turns people into zombies. Like, they just sort of stand there. They don't do anything. Because they get rid of their frontal lobe, and it's like all about, it gets rid of all their creativity and like all this shit in their brain. So, and you don't know what's going on inside their head, but from a outside point of view, they're just standing there. But yeah, so Leo people think he just gave up on live, and so he's going to just let them get rid of all this. Which I'm not sure which side I really fall on. I like the theory about he decides his last words, like Maverick said, makes it seem like he knows what's going on. But I'm not sure if I believe in that or if he just regressed. Because from what we've heard, he's been regressing over and over again for the past 2 years or whatever. Yeah, so it's hard to tell. But yeah, that ending, the end of it, I was like, Jesus Christ.
It was something, man.
It was, yeah. So, but anyway, we'll get into the movie a little bit. Movie starts off with Leo and Mark Ruffalo, or as I just write him down in my notes as the Hulk the whole time.
Yeah, the Hulk. That's who he is,
But they're on a boat. They're heading over to Shutter Island. Even though I don't think they call it Shutter Island. The island's called something else. Or the mental asylum is. It's called, like, I was going to say Alcatraz, but that's not it. It's
Rikers Island?
No, because that's a prison. It started with an A. I don't remember what the name of the asylum was. But they're on a boat on their way to the asylum because a woman by the name of Rachel something, I don't remember her last name, basically vanished overnight. She escaped from her jail. So they're two U.S. Marshals on their way to investigate the case. And on their way there, you get some back. Leo tells Mark Ruffalo that, he was married, but his wife died in a fire that killed 4 people. And that's his little backstory and shit. Also, another fun little thing at the beginning is that Leo can't find his cigarettes in his pocket, and that, once again, looking back, that's just another little thing that's like, oh.
There was a couple. I wanted to get some explanation on the ending, so I watched a couple YouTube videos. And there's some shit, like, they point out key points where, like, oh, it's pointing to he's actually in the men, like, he's yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, man, I got you. But also, as they're entering, like, the asylum, the opening music in this movie was bumping. I was like, God damn.
It was so loud.
It was super loud. But yeah, they enter the island and they're met by the asylum guards, and they tell, they're like, all right, you don't go into this ward unless you're followed or have company. And they tell them where everything is on the island, And then they're like, we need your firearms. You're not allowed in here with your firearms. And then Leo finally decided, and he goes, okay, and he hands over his gun. And then something that I knew was weird when it happened, but I didn't know why it was weird as it was happening. But keeping in mind that when Mark Ruffalo goes to get his gun, he can't get it out of the holster, so he just gives over the whole holster and the gun. Which, when that was happening, I was like, what's going on here? But keep that in mind for when it comes back later. But they go walking through the courtyard. You get this creepy ass shot of this lady like brushing rakes, and she has like Gollum hair where it's all stringy and shit.
Yeah.
And then she's just like,
oh, that's fucked up.
Yeah, and she's like telling
Her
Leo,
her throat was slit. She had a scar across her throat.
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus.
She tells Leo to be quiet, and then he looks back, and she's like, and she's smiling at him and shit. And once that scene alone had more horror in it than anything in Beetlejuice.
Fucking whole movie.
Yeah. But well, yeah, there was another part I thought it was pretty horror-y. But anyway, Leo and Mark Ruffalo go in, and this is when you get introduced to Ben Kingsley in this bitch, who plays. It was real weird because he wasn't the warden. He was just like the head doctor or something.
I don't know what his role is.
I don't either, because then later they end up talking to another doctor who's in the chair across from Ben
Nazi
Kingsley.
doctor, yeah.
Yeah, and he, to me, it seemed like he was more in control of the place than Ben Kingsley, but I don't remember what their titles were. But they meet Ben Kingsley. This is when they're told about, Rachel. She killed her 3 kids. She drowned them, and then put them at the kitchen table to eat a meal before the neighbors realized what was happening and shit. And you're like, oh, goddamn. Also, I wrote this down, which I don't think has anything to... But then there was... Because once again, obviously, I knew Leo was crazy. But then I started thinking, because Ben Kingsley's like, oh, her husband died on D-Day in Normandy or whatever. And then I started thinking to myself, I was like, wait, is Leo dead? I remember thinking to myself, are they going to do a switcher where he is the husband of this lady who he died on D-Day? Which, I guess we kind of, because later on you do kind of find out that backstory they gave was of his wife, but I don't think he's dead. I just, he is just crazy. They show Leo some pictures of this lady, and this is when you get your first time that Leo has his weird visions, because they show him the pictures of the lady, and then he gets flashes to what we'll find out later is a concentration camp that when Leo was in the war, him and his group of soldiers infiltrated, and there's just frozen dead bodies everywhere and shit. And I remember that was popping up, and I was like, what's going on? I was like, I don't remember this part.
That was probably one of my favorite parts.
That was cool.
Scenes was the frozen bodies on the train. It looks good for 2010.
Yeah. So they get all this stuff about this lady that escaped during the night, and then they end up interviewing all the patients and stuff to see if anyone knew about. And I just wrote down that this one dude, that the first guy they talked to, he's like, man, or no, I'm sorry, this is when they go outside to look around some, and they're talking to the main cop dude who's there, and Leo's like, what about that cave over there? Could she be in there? And the cop's like, nah, that cave's got thorns the size of my dick in there. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that dude was weird.
That dude was weird. Which, also, during that scene, something happened that I didn't really think twice about until later when I was reading stuff, is that when Leo looks around, all the cops are just sort of sitting around.
Yeah,
they have their feet.
Yeah,
they just have their feet in the water and stuff. And I didn't really think anything of it then, but then reading on it.
I took it as like the whole time I'm still in the mindset of they're going to try to make him crazy. So they were really like they knew where the girl was in my mind. They were the ones who
Yeah.
put her somewhere else so that he would come to the island. Is what I was thinking. But
Uh-huh.
now you figure out he's crazy, and then the guards are just playing like role
Exactly.
play.
Yeah. Reading it, they're just like they're sitting because they don't have anything to do. There isn't any real mental
Yeah,
patient.
they know that they're just playing a role, so that
Yeah.
they're not doing a very good job of playing the role because they're
No,
sitting on their
like they're just
ass.
sitting there. Yeah. But anyway, so then after this is when Leo starts to interrogate some people. You find out that her primary physician, Dr. Sheen, keep that name in mind, had left that morning on a ferry for vacation. And Leo's like, well, no, the weird thing is, it's not even Leo who says it. It's Mark Ruffalo, who's like, wait, so you're telling me this Dr. Sheen is her primary doctor, and he leaves the day that she escapes or whatever? That's awful weird and shit. And they're like, yeah. And so instantly you start getting weird vibes because they don't want to they won't call Dr. Sheen. Or they make one try because Leo's like, we'll call him. And they go and the radios are down because there's this big storm coming in.
Yeah, big storm.
Yeah, and instantly they're giving off these weird vibes. And you can tell they're keeping something to themselves. This is when like I said, they go to meet Ben Kingsley and who ends up this like Nazi doctor who also is working at this place. And you get a cool backflash. That's not right. Flashback.
Flashback.
Of Leo in the war, and this is when you see the Nazi dude who ran the concentration camp tries to kill himself when they come in.
Yeah,
But
shoot himself in the head.
He botched job.
He botched it, yeah.
And so he just like shoots himself in the face. And so he's laying there like dying, and he's trying to reach for the gun, and Leo just real slow, like it almost looked like he was doing a ballet dance.
It did. He did a
his
little
foot.
two-step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just sort of moves the gun away from him, and Leo's like, it took that Nazi bastard an hour to bleed to death or whatever. And yeah, and you get like, well, that's all you see there, because then later on we come back to that same part. But Nazi doctor and Leo argue some about just random shit. And I'm gonna be honest, that conversation they were having, I kind of that was the one part of the movie that I really kind of was like, all right, blanked out a little bit, was when the Nazi doctor and Leo were talking. But whatever they were talking, Leo is like, we're fucking out of here, you guys are lying, see you pieces of shit later. And he leaves. But then that night he has a dream of his wife telling him that Rachel isn't gone, she's still on the island, and he needs to stay there and look for her. And then she like turns around and her whole back is like ashes and shit.
Yeah. Well, she had mentioned another guy too to go look for him, that he was on the island.
Yeah.
Andrew, whatever.
Yeah, Andrew. Well, yeah, Andrew Lighthouse or whatever.
Yeah,
it was his last name. Yeah, we'll get into him. But anyway, so next morning they wake up, and there's a giant storm. It ends up turning into a hurricane, so no ferries are coming in, so they can't leave. So Leo decides to just start working the case again. There was one, even though once again I knew like Leo was crazy, but the story was so engaging to me that I started like writing down notes because I was like, he's gonna figure out this mystery, you know. And like I was writing down because Ben Kingsley is talking about Rachel, and he keeps on going, she was this and she was that, and Leo is like, why do you keep saying was
everything
and not is?
Past tense.
Yeah, and of course you're thinking, oh, well, she's dead or something like that, right? And I wrote down, I was like, this is getting good. Leo is figuring shit out. But yeah, and so then this is when Leo finally starts talking to patients and shit. And this one patient is just randomly talking about this girl who he's like, she wanted to suck my cock. I could tell she was a slut. And,
yeah, from her eyes or whatever. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And he was talking about she wanted me to pull, like, he could tell from her eyes that she wanted him to pull his dick out so she could laugh at it.
Yeah.
Like from her eyes, like he could tell, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
This dude. No wonder he's in a mental asylum. Like,
Yeah.
so
And
he cut her up with a
cut
fucking
her up.
glass, like some sharp glass or whatever.
Yeah. And then the same guy right after that, he's talking about he hates sluts and stuff. And then he starts going on about
Oh, God.
all them people, the retards and the N-words, they should all be gassed. And and I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, because they brought up Rachel, and he was like, "That bitch drowned her own children. She
Yeah.
should be gassed, like the other people Thomas previously mentioned."
yeah.
So I'm saying that shit. Fuck
Yeah.
outta here.
And and he freaks out. And I was like, well, calm down, buddy. And Leo,
Yeah, that man was tweaking.
Leo, lunges across the table and he, grabs him by the collar. He's like, you listen to me, you motherfucker. And then they come in and break it up and they get rid of it. And then you have another character who's just in the movie for this one scene. But I really liked her, is the next lady they interview. And Leo's like, you seem pretty normal for around here. And she goes, yeah, well, even pretty normal people have bad days. Unfortunately, my bad days include chopping up my husband with an axe. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, shit.
That
But
lady was
then-
cool as fuck.
But then, she talks about how the husband, kept cheating on her and beating on her and stuff. And no one would help.
Yeah.
So she chopped him up. But,
Killed that man.
killed him. But, yeah, so they have a conversation with her for a little bit. And then, once again, the little tidbit is fucking Leo is like, when's the last time you saw Dr. Sheen or whatever? And she looks over to Mark Ruffalo and then she's like, can I get some water? And Mark Ruffalo leaves or whatever. And she snatches Leo's book and writes down some shit. And I was like, ooh, what's she writing down? I'm thinking it's going to be some juicy information or something. But then they end up looking and it just said run.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
man,
what
I was
sad.
like,
I was
oh.
disappointed.
I was too. The note I thought could have been a little better. But at the same, I guess at that point it helps to build up the there's something going on. You need to leave. They're keeping you here and all this shit. Yeah. So she writes fucking run or whatever. Fucking. This is when after they leave. Is when Leo starts telling Mark Ruffalo that there's another guy on this island he wants to find. A guy by the name of Andrew Lighthouse, who was the maintenance man at the apartment building that they lived at, who was a fire geek, and he's the one that lit the match that killed his
So
wife.
you call
or
him a
whatever.
firebug.
Something like
Which I
that,
thought
yeah.
was cool. He's the arsonist.
Yeah.
Like to light shit on fire.
And he's the one that killed his wife. Apparently, I think he got off on that crime, but then a year later, he killed another family with fire, and finally they sent him to jail or whatever. And so, or not jail, they sent him here. He says that he's somewhere on this island, most likely in Ward C, which is where they put all their most dangerous criminals and shit at.
Yeah.
Well, not criminals.
3 wards.
Sorry, patients. Because
Patients.
Leo has a conversation with Ben where he keeps calling them prisoners and Ben is patients, and he keeps on correcting them or whatever. But yeah, so this is why Leo personally signed up for this job, is because he has sort of second, he wants to find Andrew Lighthouse, most likely to kill Andrew Lighthouse, but I won't speculate on what his intentions were if he found them. This is when they go to look in a fucking cemetery for Rachel, because that's a place they haven't looked yet, and they're like, well, maybe she was hidden, in the one place no one would think to look, and so that's just a graveyard where she would be buried or whatever. And as they're there, the hurricane fucking kicks in the full force and starts knocking down trees and shit. There's I don't know if it's real, but in my mind it was real, which is when they're running to get to the little tomb or wherever they go in to stay safe from the storm. I know that it was trees and debris flying by. Did it not sound like bullets? to you?
No, I didn't get. No, I didn't
To
get
me,
Thor.
I was like, and I didn't know we were about to go into another war flashback, but I was thinking it was going to transition into like some shit where he's getting shot at, because it sounded like just bullets or whatever whizzing by. But anyway, I don't know if that's just something I took from it, so it might not be real. But they go into this fucking tomb to hide out from the storm. They start talking, and this is when I think Mark Ruffalo is like, he's like, if we find Lighthouse, I won't judge you for whatever you do if you want to kill him or whatever. And Leo talks about when they were at that concentration camp, how after they saw everyone all dead and frozen and shit, they just lined up all the Nazi soldiers. And you get a great shot of just going down the line of just all the Nazis and then just fucking just lighting them up. And Leo is like, it wasn't war, it was murder or whatever.
Another great line.
So Leo says he's had enough of killing.
Yeah, so he wasn't going to kill the guy that killed his family.
Yeah.
Or no, that killed his wife, because he didn't have kids as his alter ego, right?
Yeah, he didn't have kids, no. It was just her that died. But he did say that, I don't remember if she was included in it, but he did say 4 people died in the fire. Which in total, when we get to the end, 4 people did die. But I don't know if that
his wife
had,
and 3 kids.
Yeah, I don't know if that had something to do with it. This is when I wrote down, they had found a note from Rachel. But I think it was a different note. Or no, it was the note under her bed that they found at the very beginning of the movie. And they found this note that said, what did it say? It was like, what was the beginning part? Because then the last thing was, who is 67?
Yeah, they were saying, on the note. I forget what the first part said.
I do too. That's the part I'm struggling with. But yeah, it says something, and then who is 67? And Ben Kingsley and them are like, we have no idea what it could mean. But then after the hurricane, they get picked up at the cemetery and driven back. And they walk into a meeting where Ben Kingsley and everyone's having a conversation. And during this, Leo picks up that there's 24 women patients and fucking 42 male patients. And so Leo's like, wait a minute. So that's 66. So then wouldn't the question, who is 67? That basically means that Rachel thinks you have a 67th patient that isn't documented or whatever. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they had... Yeah.
Yeah. Which one... When we get in, like... Because obviously this whole thing is just role play or whatever. So it's like, what was there... How much of this did they put that note there and just be like, yeah, this will do something?
I don't know, now that I think about it.
Yeah. Because funny enough, when I was reading theories about the ending and stuff, and really there's only the two, is whether he was crazy again at the end or if he was making it up. I didn't see a single one try to say that he really wasn't crazy and that they just made him think he was crazy, But
because I don't think they made him crazy.
I don't think so either. But I'm surprised that no one has brought up a theory saying that he really was... That it worked. Whatever they did, they made him think he was crazy.
I don't think there's any... Because the lady was telling him in the cave about how he's been they're giving him, like, slipping him drugs, right? Mm-hmm. In the cigarettes and the food and the water.
The aspirin he takes for his headaches.
Yeah, the pills he took.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything out there that can actually, like, make you think. Because... like halfway through the movie or whatever, he's like, yeah, I am Andrew, my wife. I killed my wife after she killed my 3 children, and he's having these flashbacks of remembering. And I'm just like, there's no amount of pills that can make you, like, if that wasn't real, he wouldn't be, like, remembering it like that.
Hey, well, let's get some pills and we'll test it out tonight, baby.
Factor cat.
But But yeah, so he's throwing out all these accusations, and he's like, you're lying about everything. There is a 67th patient. And then Ben Kingsley's like, have they not told you? Rachel's been found. And then it just cuts to them looking at this girl in her cell. And once again, you know, she had left barefoot. That was a thing earlier, where she had left both pairs of shoes she had in her room, which then added to the mystery of it all, because they talk about how rough the terrain is around the island, and there's thorns everywhere, and so also I meant to say thorns, but I think I said Thors everywhere, and that's not what I meant. Chris Hemsworths are everywhere throughout the island, but and so I only mention that because as they see her for the first time, they look down and her feet are like spotless. So once again, it's like,
they I think it was Mark Ruffalo that said not a mark on her.
Yeah.
So she was walking around barefoot and like eluding and escaped everybody. Then she would at least have a scratch.
Something, yeah.
But no, she was clean.
Yeah. So she talks to Leo some, and her whole deal that they had made up is that she drowned her 3 kids, and she acts like it never happens. Like she's still just living her normal life. And so she starts calling Leo by her husband's name, and all this shit, and she starts hugging on, and Leo, like...
Yeah, Leo starts asking her questions.
Yeah. Leo starts to... At the time, I didn't put it together, but now looking back on it, because he starts hugging her back, and he's like, "Oh, nothing's gonna happen now, you know, and it seemed like he was thinking about his wife, because in the back of the head, he knew that this was his wife's story about drowning the 3 kids, and she'd gone crazy and stuff. So that's what I take now afterwards, as he was thinking about his wife here and all that. But then,
yeah, that's good. They had that lady, like, that was an actor, right?
Yeah,
not
like,
actual...
because next she just starts saying, "Wait, I buried. Who are you? Who are you?" And just starts freaking out. And so, unless that was a real crazy lady, but it doesn't make sense that it was, since this whole thing was role play and made up.
Yeah, that lady is a fake person. Like they said it. She's a fake. She's not real.
It's like, what was the point in making her yell at him? Oh, well, maybe because she's like, "Who are you? Maybe it's to try to work in that he's not really who he's saying he is. I don't know, but that's just another weird thing. This is when they go to Ben Kingsley's room right after this, and this is when Leo first gets his migraine. Where, man, I don't know if they just like their brightness was killing me. Like, the flashes and stuff.
Yeah, the flashes were insane.
And so I started getting a headache watching this dude get a headache. And, yeah, so they give Leo some medicine, and he, like, passes out. And he gets some crazy nightmares where he sees Andrew Latis with a gnarly scar across the face that Leo had said he had, and his eyes are different colors. For a second, I thought it was Robert De Niro, but... it wasn't. I don't know who that was playing him, but and he's just talking some crazy shit, and then he sees like Rachel with her dead kids in front of her and all this shit, which obviously is not really Rachel, but he doesn't know that. And during that whole thing, because he's like, Andrew Lightis, like. I can't pronounce. Latis is his name. He lights a cigarette for Leo, and there's a cool ass shot where he hears the Rachel lady scream, and when he looks over, if you notice, Maverick, his like cigarette smoke is getting sucked up back into his cigarette, like it's all just going back in. Yeah, it was really cool. And then the next shot, the cigarette's gone or whatever, so it's like it just vanished back away or whatever. But I saw that and I was like, ooh, look at that, the smoke's going back inside. But yeah, so, and he sees the kids, dead kids, and the wife and stuff, and then he wakes up again, and he's like, oh, goddamn. Second movie in a row that we've had, where last week with American Werewolf in London, dude was having all these terrible nightmares, waking up all sweaty. Second week in a row with this. So he wakes up the next morning, hurricane's finally passed. Unfortunately, though, it's like taking out all the electrical fences across the island. Patients are just like walking around and stuff. Everyone's having to grab them and shit. So this is the time where Leo's like, let's get into Ward C. We'll see what's going on in there. And so they go running in there, him and Mark Ruffalo. And the second they get in there, the next thing you know, this motherfucker just runs up and goes, "Tagger it." He just like
out of the dark.
Yeah.
Just...
And at first I thought that was Andrew Latis who tagged him. Because he went running after him. He's like, "You motherfucker." And I was thinking, "Oh shit, is that the guy?" But I don't know. But he goes chasing after him, and he winds up just in these dark ass corridors where he's having to flick matches to see where he's going. He's walking past all these crazy people who are like reaching out and grabbing him through the cells and all this shit. And then when he gets to the very back of this place, there's another guy back there who starts talking to him, and he's like, "She's gonna kill you. You need to let her go." And Leo's like, "Show me your face. Who the fuck are you?" And I was like, "Oh man, who is this guy?" I thought for a second that it was gonna be Leo seeing himself in that cage, and I thought that was how they were gonna do the reveal. Because like I said, I forgot how they did the whole "you're crazy" thing. But it wasn't him. In fact, it was Rorschach from Watchmen, who was in the jail, playing George something. I don't remember his last name.
I don't remember. He called him Georgie.
Yeah, like he knew, and he was like, "Georgie," and Rorschach is like, "You did this to me" and shit. Meanwhile, I'm just waiting for him to say, "You're locked in here with me," and like just fucking. But and George like just keeps yelling. His face is all fucked up and shit, which will come back later. But he's like, "You gotta let her go. She's gonna kill you and shit." And he's like, "Who are you talking about?" And I don't remember how he ended up ending his conversation with George. Did someone come in to get him, or did he just leave?
What do you mean?
Well, because he's talking to George, but then did Mark Ruffalo come back down there and get him? Or did he end his conversation with George and leave?
Because George was yelling at him behind the bars and then went and sat back down, and that was the end of the conversation.
Okay, I couldn't remember how it ended. But yeah, so Leo leaves. He runs back into Mark Ruffalo, who they had gotten separated when they were in the fucking place. Also, George starts planting seeds into his head because he's like, "How long have you been working with Chuck or whatever?" He's like, "They're fucking with you. You just met this guy or whatever." And he's saying that it's a whole setup deal of him coming to the island and all this shit.
Yeah, I don't think he was meant to find Georgie.
Yeah,
Georgie again.
I don't think he was meant to see George. They were trying to keep him out of Ward C. But so he leaves George, meets back up with Mark Ruffalo. I fucking clicked out on my notes. I'm having to go back. He meets back up with Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo's like, "Check this out. I found the intake. You were right. There is a 67th patient." And he has the intake form for Andrew Latis. So he's like, "They've been lying to us, you know?" And Leo just sort of does like "All right, cool, man. I'll look at it later." And you can tell
he's not trusting him.
Yeah, George has really fucked with his head, and so he's not trusting anything Ruffalo's saying. And Leo is like, "I want to get to that fucking lighthouse. I want to see what's going on in there. That's where whatever's going on in this island is right there." And Mark Ruffalo's like, "Come on, man. We don't need to do all that." And he's like, "Why the fuck don't you want me going in there and seeing it and shit?" And now he's like full on just paranoid mode. And so he's like, "I'm going to get in there. You're going to stay here." And Ruffalo's like, "I'm coming with you, boss." And Leo's like, "No, you stay here." And so he makes Ruffalo stay. He goes, and he only gets like, he walks up to it, and then like the tide has come up, so he can't get to the lighthouse. And so he's like, "Fuck." So he goes back, to the cliff where he left Mark Ruffalo, and he's not there. And he's like, what the fuck? And he's like, Chuck. And then he looks, and a cigarette is at the very end of the cliff that's burning. And I remember looking at me like, what's going on here, you know?
Yeah.
And then he looks down, and there's a really cool sound effect where it almost sounds like you can hear Mark Ruffalo fall, where it's like a whoosh, that happens when he looks down. And you see Mark Ruffalo just down there dead, like on the ground. And I was like, oh, shit. I was like, what the fuck's going on? And Leo, like, climbs down this fucking rock face. And he gets all the way down there. And he looks, and it's just a rock. It's just a rock that looks like a body.
He climbed all the way down there. Yeah, and it looked like a body from above.
Yeah. And at this point, I was like, God, what is... Like, once again, I knew that the ending, but I was like, what's going on at this point? I was like, how is this all going to come, full circle? But, so also, I did call bullshit because as he's climbing down the rock face, it just so happens that the intake sheet flies up to him, and he's able to grab it while he's on the cliff, yeah. So then, as he's down there, the next thing you know, all these rats start crawling out of the wall. Like, through this little hole, and the whole rock is just covered in rats now.
There's a lot of rats.
A lot of rats.
And
Takashi's everywhere.
Yeah. It's not CGI, because there's no way 2010 CGI looked like that.
Yeah.
So they had real rats running around the set like that.
And so then, as he's down there, he also sees this little thing inside the cave, and he can see a fire is going on, because it's getting dark now. So... he starts climbing up the rock, and he's like kicking rats out of the way. And he climbs all the way up, and he finds this little cave like on the side of this mountain that this lady is in. And she's like holding a knife, and she's like, I'm going to keep this if you don't mind. He's like, that's all right. And he just goes to sit next to the fire. And so immediately he's like, you're the real Rachel, aren't you? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, how long have you been a patient here or whatever? And she tells him she's never been a patient here. She never had children to kill. She's never even been married. She says that she was a doctor here. And that this is, she starts talking about this. They pick people and they do brain surgery to get rid of all their, to get rid of their pain, and they get rid of all their memories. So they can basically make these guys do whatever they want. And they will never have any memories to confess to anything. And you can kill them because they're still people, but they don't feel any pain. So it's a lot harder to like get them to stop doing whatever they're doing.
She was talking about Germans, like the Nazis, experimenting on people, and the Russians in like gulags experimenting. And she was like, the USA is doing it on that island.
Yeah. Which. Once again, because already the Nazi doctor dude is there. So Leo starts thinking, this makes perfect fucking sense, because this guy's here, and so it's all adding up to him. And he is like, this is when also she's like, I think he winces or whatever. He starts getting another headache. And she's like, you got a headache? And he's like, I'm prone to migraines or whatever. And she's like, have you drank anything or taken anything while you've been here? And he's like, I've taken like an aspirin or something. And she's like, oh my God. She immediately just heard their medicines. She's like, at least tell me you're smoking your own cigarettes. And he's like, no, I haven't been. So she's telling him that everything they're giving him is laced with this like medicine that will make him feel sick and eventually start to just get paranoid and all this shit. And so, basically, at this point, Leo's head is fucked. Like, she has destroyed whatever sanity he had left her at this point. So, and she says that everyone knows what's going on. She's like, all the nurses know what's happening. Everybody's in on it. Yeah, she's like, and Leo's like, where's my partner? Where's Chuck? And she's like, you don't have any friends here. Or whatever, and so she's basically saying, you're alone, everyone's fucking with you, everyone knows what's going on.
Yeah, they were saying Chuck was in on it.
Yeah. Fucking Leo eventually, he leaves the cave in the morning because the lady says that she always moves spots, and she says that, you know, they think that she's dead or whatever. So they won't come looking for her, but they'll come looking for him. And if they come looking for him, then there's a good chance they find her. So she's like, you gotta go. So he leaves. On his way...
So she was never real.
Never real.
So he never saw that fire coming from the cave because she made that fire.
Yeah.
So it's like a really tricky... Like, so if she didn't make the fire, did he make the fire? Crawled down the rocks, went, oh shit, there's a fire up there, and crawled back up the rocks?
He did the old whoop-de-wop back to the rocks.
Yeah, so when you start fucking with the human brain and, like, memory and...
Uh-huh.
I don't know, it gets a little tricky in, like, in film. Like,
Yeah.
I still don't know how they pulled it out. Was it just like a vision? So did he crawl in the cave and then just pass out, and then he had like a dream of that or whatever?
I think he really thought Mark Ruffalo died, and he crawled down there, and then as he was there, I think at this point, after he saw the rock, or had the hallucination that the rock was Mark Ruffalo, and when he looked back up, I think it was all just in his head. I don't think there was any fire or anything. I think he just made it up. I'm not even sure, honestly. Thinking back, he might have not even been in that cave thing. He might have just climbed back up, because then the next morning he's like walking on a road. But I think he really was in the cave, but none of that happened. I'm pretty sure he was like Gollum talking to himself in there, and had this whole situation going on.
Yeah, because at the beginning they said it's an island and it's 11 miles in with freezing water.
Yeah.
Surrounding it, so like 11 miles from the nearest land, and
and there's no
like 2 or 3 times in the movie.
Yeah, the only way to get off the island is by ferries, and they control the ferries, is what she says. So she's like, you're not getting off. But yeah, so the next, but she kicks him out. The next morning, he's walking along this road, and he gets picked up by one of the guards. And him and the guard have this. Also, I don't know. This guard looks super Nazi-ish, by the way. Like, the hat he was wearing and everything looks super Nazi-ish. And I don't think it was the main guard who's been throughout the movie. He looked different to me, and he sounded different. But I don't know, it might have been him, but I think it was a different guy. So I don't know who this guy was that picked up Leo. But he just starts talking about, everyone's violent. You're violent and shit. And Leo's like, you don't know me. I'm not fucking violent. And he's like, yes, you are. Yes, you are. He just keeps cutting them off. And he's like, and this whole thing about human nature and all this shit. And fucking, he's like, if I leaned in and bit your eyeball right now, could you stop me before I blinded you? And Leo's like, give it a try. And he's like, attaboy. And he slaps him on the shoulder or whatever. So, yeah, that was just a weird interaction he had with that guard on the way back to the island.
Yeah, it was the warden, right?
Was it the warden? Okay, yeah, maybe that was the warden. Because the warden has, like, the least screen time in this movie. Out of, like, the 3 pillars that run the island.
Yeah, because I think one of those YouTube videos I watched said the warden did not like him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because the warden is probably just there to be a warden. And now he's having to put up with all this shit because Ben Kingsley is trying to do all these, this weird role play to try to help these crazy fucking dudes or whatever. Which, we'll get, because his crime alone, I don't think is that bad. Like, if you told someone this guy killed his wife because she drowned their 3 kids, I think people would be like, okay, that seems fair.
Understandable.
He might still get jail time, but I don't
definitely get jail time.
Well, I don't want to, but I don't think anyone would bat an eye. But
yeah, understandable.
Him being crazy, like, and understandably so, that'll fuck with someone. But yeah, it's weird that the warden, like I said, I think the warden's just a hard ass because he's having to deal with all these experiments. But it's weird that he would not like him in particular when you think of what his crime was, and it really wasn't that bad. So, But anyway, he drops Leo off. Leo goes walking in, and immediately, like, Ben Kingsley and everyone, they're like, "Where have you been?" And he's like, "I'm on to you. I've seen all the show." He's like, "Where's my fucking partner?" And Ben Kingsley's like, you don't have a partner. You came here alone and all this shit. And at this point, you're thinking that like either Mark Ruffalo is dead and they killed him, or what Leo ends up thinking is that they've taken him to do, brain experiments to turn him into one of these soldiers. And Ben,
I don't know. I was thinking he was in on it, and now they're turning it to where they want him to think he's crazy because he didn't actually come in by himself.
Yeah.
He had his partner.
Yeah.
But now they're like, the partner's in on it. So now they're like, you never had a partner.
Yeah.
There was no partner ever. And then now dude's like questioning himself.
Yeah.
But he never broke. So it didn't work.
Yeah. And so yeah, and Ben Kingsley's like, we run this island, we control everything. There is no partner. And then Leo starts to realize like if he keeps pushing it, he's not going to get out of this situation. So then Ben Kingsley's like, so where's your partner? And Leo's like, what partner?
What partner?
And I was like, oh shit.
He was like, okay, I'll play your game.
Yeah.
Like,
so then Leo starts walking with this random doctor dude. Or no, it was the head doctor. It was the Nazi doctor dude. And I don't know if the Nazi doctor dude had it on him or where Leo got it, but all of a sudden he just pulls out like some knockout drugs and a needle, and he like stabs the Nazi doctor and puts him to sleep.
Yeah, I don't. So he walked into the room with the Nazi doctor, which we call him Nazi doctor. He was listening to a record that
he was from Germany, and I don't know if he was even involved in the war. But it's all legal. He has his papers to be here. But it kind of makes sense that he would be a doctor for, Nazi Germany and Den Deer and all that. He would leave and come to America. So he might be, but we're just calling him a Nazi doctor. We don't know.
The whole thing was, because dude didn't have a German accent.
Yeah, he almost had a British accent, but somehow they deducted that he was from Germany.
Well, it's because when you first meet him, he's sitting in the chair by the fire. And the record that's playing was the same record that was playing when dude walked in at the concentration camp and the German shot himself in the head. It was the same record.
And so that's when you get your first flash of like the papers flying everywhere in that room. Yeah,
so dude was like, that's why he knew who the musician was on the record, is because he's heard it before.
Yeah, so Leo, he knocks out Nazi doctor. He goes and like he blows up a fucking car to to draw all the people's attention over there. And then he's going to the lighthouse. He's like, I'm gonna find out what the fuck's going on. And can I just compliment my boy? Does a perfect swan dive into the water to go swim to the lighthouse. I was impressed as fuck. But he dives into the water. He goes swimming over to the lighthouse. His wife is in these visions telling him, "Don't go in there. You're gonna die in there. It's the end of you." Yeah. And so he steals a rifle from a guard that's on the island, and he like knocks him out. He goes running into the lighthouse. He's like climbing up all the spiral stairs and shit, and he busts into a room, and Ben Kingsley's just sitting there at a desk. And immediately, like, Leo's like, all right, this is the end of it. I'm on to you. I found the real Rachel in the cave over there. And Ben Kingsley's like, well, that's impossible because Rachel isn't real. And he's like, what? And he's like, I'm sick of your shit. And he's like, you've been drugging me. How do you explain all this? And his hand's shaking and shit. And Ben Kingsley's like, well, that's just withdrawals. And he's like, withdrawals? I haven't had, alcohol in years or whatever. And he's like, no, that's withdrawals from extramadazine or whatever the fuck.
The pills they were giving
whatever. Him. Yeah, he says the pills that they've been giving him for the last 24 months that he's been staying here.
Yeah, the last 2 years. Yeah.
And this is when you start going, oh, shit. So then you're kind of, the way they've built the movie, at this point, you're like, is he telling the truth, or are they still trying to make him think he's crazy because they're an evil organization on this island or whatever, making super soldiers? And Leo's like, no, I'm a U.S. Marshal. And Ben Kingsley's like, you were a U.S. Marshal.
I'm a U.S. Marshal.
Marshal, yeah.
Marshal.
His accent was great.
It was only on like certain words.
Certain
like,
words,
He'd have like a heavy accent, and the rest of the time there's nothing.
Yeah.
Marshal.
And then so Leo at this way, he's freaking out, and fucking Ben Kingsley stands up and goes over to a whiteboard. And this, I will say, is probably the most reach guess or clue that they gave you throughout the movie. Is dude rips off a thing, and all the names of Rachel, whatever her last name is, and Andrew Lightus and Doloz, whatever. It's all the same letters, just reorganized or whatever. So all the names are the same.
Anagram or whatever.
Yeah. And I remember seeing that and being like, okay, that's cool, but who the fuck's picking up on that? Before
no one
they
would have
tell
noticed
you.
that. And it had he wrote it on its own board.
Yeah.
And like had it covered with
I
like
bet
a blanket. I was like, why?
I bet you when this came out, there was one fuck in the movie there who was writing this shit down, and he was going, oh! He was like figuring
it's like
it out.
the fucking world record scrabber, the fucking Scrabble dude, and he's like,
what the fuck is Scrabber?
Scrabble, whatever the fuck that thing is.
Scrabble bedabble. Scrabber. That's our new game. We're gonna make $1 million. Scrabber damn Scrabber, or whatever that fucking Caleb City one was. But yeah, so all the names were the same, and then this is when Ben Kingsley is like, "You're not William, whatever his name was. Oh God, you're not whoever this is. This is a made up person. You are Andrew Lightus." And dude is like, what the fuck are you talking about? And Ben Kingsley's like, you attacked George, whatever his name was, 2 weeks ago because he called you by your name, and you would do anything to make sure that you're not yourself or whatever. And so that's why down in the cell or whatever, George was saying how, Leo did this, and his face was all fucked up and shit, and he was, saying all. So that's why George is all pissed off at Leo.
You beat him.
Yeah, and so Ben Kingsley says that this whole thing has been the most like experimental role play thing they could ever think of to try to bring him back to reality, where if they let him play out this whole thing where he was this U.S. Marshal who figured out this conspiracy on this island, that maybe somehow he would revert back and realize who he was. And this is when they say, they're like, if this doesn't work, we're gonna have to take permanent measures to make sure you never hurt anyone again, because he's the most violent fucking patient they have on the island. And so Leo is like, he's really, because he's like, he's fucked at this point. He doesn't know what to believe.
Yeah.
And so he's like, where's Chuck? Give me Chuck. And next thing you know, the door just opens and Mark Ruffalo comes walking in wearing this nice suit. And he's like, hey, boss. And Leo, like, he's like, Chuck, what's going on here? And then Mark Ruffalo.
You working for them?
Yeah, you working for them? And this is probably my favorite part or reveal of the movie is the Mark Ruffalo's like, don't you recognize me? I've been your primary psychiatrist for 2 years. I'm Martin Sheen or whatever. And so Mark Ruffalo has been Dr. Sheen that they've been mentioning throughout the whole movie. And that's why he's been his partner and having to be with him everywhere, is because he is the guy that's responsible for looking out for him. That's why, when Leo keeps asking the patients where Dr. Sheen is, they keep looking over to Mark Ruffalo like, this is weird. he's sitting right here, And I was like, fuck me, this is some crazy shit. And so, yeah, so they're pleading with them, and they're like, listen, they're gonna put a lobot. They're gonna do a lobotomy.
Can't speak today.
Yeah. If you this doesn't work, this is our last effort or whatever. Also, by the way, if you remember, because I talked about on the counter, Mark Ruffalo's gun is sitting there in the fucking the pouch or whatever. The reason, even though
holster,
yeah, the holster, is he doesn't know how to unholster it because he's a doctor. He's never dealt with it before, so he just takes off the whole thing and gives it over. And that's why that scene was so weird or whatever. Even though I'm pretty sure a normal person could figure out just and unholster a gun. Like, it doesn't. I don't know why he had such trouble with it. But so they're pleading with him, and they're like, "Come on, man, we're trying to break through to you." And Leo like grabs his gun real fast. He's like, "All right, stay the fuck back." And this is when you get like prime Leo, especially over the last like 10 years, has had those parts in the movies where he just starts like yelling at the top of his voice, and he really shines through in those moments. And he's just screaming at him. He's like, "Stay the fuck back," and fucking Ben Kingsley's like, "The gun isn't loaded. You can't." And he's like, "You're not getting with me on this one, Doc. I can see this mark right here where whoever shot at him like 2 years ago or something and nicked his gun." And so Ben Kingsley's like, "All right, go ahead and shoot." And so Leo pans over and fucking pop, 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 and
shoots him.
Fires like 3 shots at Ben Kingsley. You can see blood like splatter out on the back. And then he looks over at Mark Ruffalo, but then you look back and Ben Kingsley's perfectly fine. And it was just in his imagination that the blood came out. And then Leo just like takes his gun and just snaps it. And it's a fucking toy gun. They gave this they gave him a toy gun. And and he's like what's going on? And so then Ben Kingsley grabs some photos and he starts showing, and it's Leo's dead kids. And this is when you find out that his wife went crazy, drowned their 3 kids, and killed. And then you finally get a flashback showing you what happened, where he comes home and his wife is just sitting out on the porch on like a swing, and he's like, she's acting all weird, and he's like, "Where are the kids?" And she's like, "They're in school." And he's like, "It's a Saturday." And she's like, "They're in my school. It has school on Saturday or something." And that was creepy, she was creepy. And then he looks over, and you just see 3 kids floating in a fucking lake.
Yeah, that scene was insane.
Yeah. And it, like, you kind of think that that's all they're gonna show, but he goes over, and like you get a full like 5-10 minutes of him trying to do mouth to mouth on like his daughter, and just fucking just bawling, and he's like, just can't believe what's going on. And he grabs like all 3 of his kids. His wife is just watching from like the yard, and he drags them back and like lays them all out on the ground. And his wife comes over and starts hugging on him, and she's like, "I love you so much." And she's like, "Free me," or something. She said, I remember.
Well, she said they could dress up the dead kids as they could be their little dolls. I was like, oh god,
yeah,
this lady's insane.
And so the next thing you know, Leo just fucking pop and just pops her in the stomach and kills her. And that's the story of how Leo wound up where he was. And you get like one shot of Leo falling over in the lighthouse, and then it cuts to them in like a bed, and he's sitting up. And I almost thought it was a flashback to when he first got admitted to the hospital, when they cut to him in the bed or whatever. But it ends up being after the lighthouse part. And finally he admits to, he is Andrew Lightus, and he made all this shit up, and he killed his wife in the spring of 52 because she drowned their 3 kids and all this shit. And then, so they're like, all right, cool. And then, like we had talked about earlier, the final scene, Hulk comes over and sits down next to him. And then he's like, "When are we going to get off this island, Chuck? Something bad's going on here." And it's like, fuck, didn't work. Or never it did. Worked. Yeah, never has been. And so Leo walks off to his fate. You get one last shot of the lighthouse, and the movie ends. What a fucking...
It was a journey, man.
It was a journey, dude. That movie. Jesus Christ. Movie had a budget of $80 million, made a box office of $294 million. I remember opening weekend, it was the biggest opening weekend Martin Scorsese had ever had until Wolf of Wall Street came out. And I think Wolf of Wall Street ended up making the most money he ever made from a movie too. So, shout out to that. fucking. Let's see. What was this I wrote down? Oh, never mind. I was reading the wrong shit. Yeah, and so then if you look back, we talked about some the clues of what's going on with all the guards standing around. Apparently there's a shot where like a patient is drinking some shit. But then the next shot she's not drinking anything, and apparently it's all because it's from Teddy's point of view.
It was when he was interviewing the patients at the table, the lady who wrote in the notebook, when she asked Mark Ruffalo to get her some water, when he brought it back, he gives her a glass of water, and then it's from Homeboy's point of view. His whole thing is like is water. So when he had that crazy dream where he saw his wife and everything, and then she turned to dust or whatever, ash. He woke up and he was covered in water because there's a leaky pipe.
Yeah.
And there's some other instances involving water, but I don't remember what they were.
A lot of water shit.
Yeah, but so when he saw the cup, it was supposed to be filled with water.
Yeah.
But he doesn't fuck with water.
Yeah.
So he didn't see it. So there was no cup.
Yeah.
But she takes a sip of something, puts it down, and now it's empty. So now he could see the cup because there's no water in it. But that was it was like over his shoulder point of view.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it turns back, and now it's over the shoulder of the lady, now there's an empty cup.
Yeah.
So it was showing he wasn't seeing shit.
Yeah. Once again, like now, if you read it and look at it, it probably when you watch it, it's super obvious. But at the time, like you don't pick that up, and then later you're like, "Fuck me," you know. There's also that scene I talked about where the guy starts freaking out, the patient they're interviewing. You can see Mark Ruffalo look at all the other guards and shit and signal them to come over and stuff. And it's just because he is the doctor at that place. He's like the head psychiatrist and all this shit. But yeah, it's a bunch of shit like that. But anyway, yeah, Leo in this movie is like Jason and Freddy vs. Jason, where he sees water and he's like,
yeah.
Even though Jason never had any problems with water before that, but that Freddy vs. Jason movie, really like it. But that water thing is real dumb compared to everything where he's literally like swimming to get people in the water. But yeah, he doesn't fuck with water.
Well, it just triggers that trauma because his kids drowned. So.
But anyway, I also like it's thinking about it now is because he is Andrew Lighthouse and he hates himself and shit. It like every people in the movie kind of look creepy. I mean, the girl in the courtyard who did the whole shush thing, she looked creepy, but no one really looked creepy in the movie. I guess you can maybe say George, but that's just Rorschach. That's just how he looks. Like he's
a lot shorter than I thought he was.
Jackie Earle Haley, that's his name. He was Freddy in the Freddy Krueger remake from like 2009. He's in a bunch of shit. But he was in season 1 of Preacher. But no one really looks creepy. And then you notice when he describes Andrew Lighthouse, and when you see him, he's like a fucking monster, you know, and he's got a scar, and his eyes are 2 different colors, and his mouth is misshapen or whatever. And it's like that's how he sees himself as. It's like going back to where he's like live as a monster or die as a good man or whatever. And so that's who Andrew Lighthouse is to him, is this fucking freak that, you know, doesn't deserve to live. But it's fucked up shit. Trauma. Anyone out there that's had their kids drown and had to kill their wife, let us know what your experiences are in the comments. But I think that's about it for this one. Talked about whole movie basically. Like I said, gave that shit a 10. Go check it out. Even though Like, if you know what is the ending, like, kind of takes away from the punch a little bit, but it's a good movie. Next week, it's my pick, and we're watching a movie that I don't know how to say the name of, Maverick.
Oh shit!
Because, so the movie is The Witch, but there's a V in front of witch.
Is it VV?
So I always call it it's like the Vitch or whatever. So I always call it The Witch, which I think is what it's called, The Witch. But on the poster or whatever, it's like VV. But anyway, from 2015, The Witch, which I like, I've seen before. The director of the movie has made another movie that I really like that we've covered on the podcast, which I won't tell you what it is, Maverick, because I want you to watch this movie, and then when we come back here next week, see if you can tell me what the other movie is the guy made. So I want to see if you can guess what it was. But anyway, next week, The Witch. I want to try to do an overtime for Cloverfield this week at some point, because we had people wanting to see us watch Cloverfield, and we haven't had an overtime for like 2 weeks or whatever.
I don't even know. Like, I've heard of Cloverfield, and I know there's a couple movies. Never seen anything on it. I have no idea what to expect.
Yeah. Yeah, Cloverfield, because Cloverfield came out, and then it was just the one movie, and then like 10 years later, they made like that 10 Cloverfield Lane or whatever. And then the next thing you knew, they had made
Was there a TV show?
Yeah, like they had made a TV show. They made another movie that they didn't tell anyone was a Cloverfield movie until you showed up, which is cool as fuck, but it probably takes away from like the money you make. You know, it's like if you went to a movie and the next thing you know, Jason popped up and it was a it was a Jason movie, but it wasn't advertised as that. Like, it's cool you didn't know it going into it, but the name value of Cloverfield, like, I appreciate that they took the sacrifice of taking away the name value and for the surprise of it's a Cloverfield movie. But anyway, I don't know when we'll fit it in, but we'll try to do a overtime on Cloverfield. But anyway, Maverick, anything you'd like to talk about before we send the folks on their way?
Oh, I got nothing.
Nothing?
I don't know. Yeah, I thought this movie was going to be a lot creepier because Insane Asylum.
Yeah. Well, I told you when you picked it wasn't much of a horror movie.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't know shit about this movie.
Yeah.
But it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Glad I picked it.
You want to know what is bad is the fucking Falcons are beating Washington 22-30 right now. I'm pissed. Fucking assholes. Anyway. So, thanks for watching. See you next week for the Witch. When we do the podcast, I'm just going to call it The Witch, but I don't know how to pronounce that fucking movie. But anyway, all right. See you guys next week.
Later.